With that, I need an agenda. I apologize.
Here.
Thank you very much, Lori. I'd ask for a roll call, Pat.
Lori Musser.
Here.
Present. Brent Jordan.
Present.
Sheriff Dermott.
Here, thank you very much. Please join me in the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you, Mike. It's been moved and seconded we approve our agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. That takes us to my report here. Our snack pack program. Bright Futures of Joplin will begin providing approximately 350 snack packs this week for students who have been identified as food insecure. BFJ is very thankful for funds from the following community donors: Community Foundation of the Ozarks Rural Vitality Grant, Jean, Mildred, and Jack Lemon's Charitable Trust, the Corley Memorial Trust, the Walmart Community Grant. BFJ is also grateful for the snack pack volunteers from Joplin Interfaith Coalition, Chamber Gives Back, St. Paul's United Methodist Church, Journey Church, the Rotary Club. Snack packs pack a powerful effect. When kids are fed, they learn better and have the energy they need to reach their full potential. Bright Futures Joplin is incredibly grateful for the chance to make a difference. We thank everybody involved in that program. National Merit Semifinalists 2020. Joplin Schools is proud to announce that Patrick Baranek has been named a semifinalist in the 66th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program. Approximately 16,000 senior semifinalists from across the country will compete for the 7,600 National Merit Scholarships worth more than $30 million to be awarded next spring. Congratulations to Patrick. Great work. Missouri Southern State University Lions. Music to our ears. 3 MSSU pep bands provided free concerts to members of the Joplin community in early September. With football season canceled, the band needed to find new ways to engage with audiences. The bands performed for Joplin School staff and students at the Administration Building, North Middle School, Columbia Elementary, and West Central Elementary. The bands also entertained community members at Freeman Hospital and retirement homes in the area. Thank you, MSSU. Worth her weight in gold. Bright Futures Joplin West Central recognized Joanne Wills, a volunteer at West Central since 2002, for her service and support for almost 2 decades. Miss Willis. Is it Willis? I apologize. Wills? Okay, Ms. Wills was presented a Gold Presidential Volunteer Service Award for her accumulated services during 2019. To be eligible for a Gold Award, a volunteer must have completed 400 service hours during the calendar year. Ms. Wills served nearly 841 hours in 2019 and has averaged approximately the same number of hours each year since 2014, when our record keeping began. She is eligible for the Lifetime Achievement Award, which recognizes those volunteers who have served a cumulative 4,000 hours during their lifetime. Thank you very much, Ms. Wills. There was a very nice article in the newspaper on this as well, and we are grateful to her for her service to West Central. That brings us to our policy committee report, and that is Brent and myself.
I'll just say that we have 10 policies, I think, up for second read this evening, and then we're just bringing one policy for first read. We've gone over several, and there'll be others that we bring forth, but just one, and it deals with student discipline. Just some wording change, some language change, and I think the overall effect of it is they're trying to instill equity amongst the punishment. And so if it's this for this student, it ought to be this for this student as well, that type of language. So
I would like to say that in my service on the board, I have moved around on committees, and there's a lot going on all the committees. And until you've served on each, you don't have familiarity with what's going on. The policy committee is another committee that does a lot of work, and I've really appreciated the opportunity to serve on it and see all the good work that's being done. That brings us to our superintendent's data report.
And we have a lot under that tonight. The first is an update on our Dover Hill Elementary, and I believe Dr. Saketa has some other folks to call forward. I see Chad coming to the table.
Yes, real quick, you all know Chad. Chad's here to talk to us about our progress so far with the project up at Dover Hill, and I'll just let him get right to it.
Great. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here this evening. We've been hard at it with the teachers both from Columbia and West Central working over the summer to try to develop the schematic design associated with the program for Dover Hill Elementary School. And I'm excited to kind of show you some of the work that we've done with them to date. The presentation that I'm going to show here gives you just kind of a chronology of some of the things that we did in various charrettes with them. The first thing we did is we identified, we have what's called learning and teaching cards, and they talk about specific ways that instruction can be received and delivered. And we broke them up into various groups, and amazingly enough, all the groups arrived at the same 2 cards, which hardly happens. So from that, we knew that we kind of had consensus in the direction we were heading as far as the overall kind of internal programming for the school. That kind of led to further conversations. But subsequent to that, we took elementary school tours of both Soaring Heights and Irving. Here you can see some pictures of us looking at the existing facilities, talking about things that work. We even included teachers from both Soaring Heights and Irving to provide feedback to the overall group. From there, we started narrowing down on the learning suites and talking about ways those can be arranged. We put together a block exercise where we kind of turned the teachers into designers through the process. Here you can see pictures of them working with blocks in their groups, and the blocks really represented programmatic spaces, how spaces are used, and their adjacencies. So how those spaces become arranged next to each other. And so they had a lot of conversation about where the spaces needed to go in the new school. From there, we made them get up and kind of present their ideas to the overall group, talk about some of the reasons behind the decisions they made. And then those started to turn into these kind of block diagrams showing classroom spaces in the light blue, some shared collaboration spaces between, and then some open collaboration spaces directly adjacent to that. And you can see that from there, we started to take their overall block diagrams, put them into a kind of format that we can talk about with them further, and then we showed a lot of kind of similar programs to the ones that they developed. It was a really fun exercise. I think they had a little bit of difficulty getting rolling, but once they got into it, they had a lot of fun. What came out of it, though, was pretty exciting. Rather than at Soaring Heights and Irving having the dedicated classroom spaces with a very kind of small shared collaboration space between the classrooms, we developed what we're calling a flexible model. And so rather than having a large collaboration space outside of the classrooms, we're taking a little bit of extra space out of there for a medium-sized space outside the classrooms and putting it back into the classroom for what we're, again, calling the flexible model. So what that means is for each grade section, they will have this flexible area. This diagram here kind of shows you a little bit how each of the 3 classrooms could start to use these spaces, represented there with the students in the various colors. So you see they can mix between 2 classrooms, and then it almost becomes this 3rd classroom by just how you reposition the operable walls between that flexible space. Here's another version where you can see that they kind of mix, so that if they had one complete grade section mixing, that they have some activity within the spaces, they could utilize the entire space. And then you can see how that almost breaks down into a smaller 4th classroom if they wanted to have some independent and kind of cross-use space between 2 or more classrooms. So pretty interesting outcome through the exercise, and I think everyone's really excited about ways that they could start to use these spaces that's a little different than what's currently happening at Soaring Heights and Irving. Here you can see what the flexible model looks like with some furnishings in the space. And really, the thing we're kind of excited about is, you know, these spaces become, you see the learning park at the bottom right. The flexible spaces are more outboard, and there's an incredible opportunity on Dover Hill for these exterior views and potential for even opening up that space and creating an outdoor space, kind of a balcony approach for the upper levels and lower level areas. We spent a lot of time meeting with the various users for the SPED area. We've spent some refinement there. You can see in the orange box in the middle, that is the media center, and it's really taken on this kind of very kind of key role in its position in the building. It's kind of becoming the heart of the school, and we've had some conversations with the media center specialist, and she's really excited about the direction this is heading. The red is showing the administration area, so we'll have the main entry just to the right of the red. The learning suites and areas are in the light blue on the right side of the plan. On the left, you see the dark purple and the lighter purple. That is the music and art area. And then shown in gray is the gym space with the commons directly to the north, with the kitchen directly to the west. So all of the preliminary plans we had in pre-bond are still fairly holding true as far as how it positions on the site and the overall arrangement with the learning suites on the east end of the building, the administrative and specials in the middle, and then the commons and gymnasium space on the west end of the building. This is a plan showing the upper level area of the learning suites. That's it. We've had a lot of fun working with them, and I think everyone's generally excited. The building, as far as tracking on costs, we're in great shape for the building, and so we're continuing to advance site development and looking at some parking and entry schemes associated with the site. So I hope to have more to report next month. Any questions?
Thank you, Chad. Does anybody have any questions for Chad?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, the next one we have is data snapshot, and that kicks it to Sarah Mwangi.
Yes, thank you. Well, as you can imagine, one of the big questions that we have waited to wrestle with is where are we at when we come back as far as learning and learning loss. So tonight, just to kind of preface, our fall window ended on Friday. So we're in a really tight time. That's why it's called a snapshot for you tonight. Just to give you some info so you have some insight into where we're at. But I do plan on an October data committee where we will dig a little deeper once we do some more analysis of our data and have a more thorough report in October. So tonight is really just to give you an idea of some quick data that we were able to pull yesterday, actually. So with that, what I want to bring your attention to, and I'm going to just have Eric kind of scroll through this. NWA worked on some statistics. They're a non-for-profit that really digs into how to help with the student growth piece. And what they found, so this first one you see is a math forecast of when school closures happened. A typical last day, which you will note, their typical last day, they're a national organization. So this is across the nation, where our typical last day is going to be a little sooner than that. So, our gap may not be as big as what some districts see that did not get out until June for school. But you'll see the difference between a typical summer learning loss, a COVID slowdown. They're considering that students who may have engaged in learning over our wellness break, and then the COVID slide. These would be students who were completely disengaged since they left us in March. And then if you scroll down and you can look at the reading forecast, You
Are
can
those
see-
just generic data?
These
That's
are
not
generic,
okay.
yes, this is generic data. You will see the difference of what the research found. They anticipated a bigger learning loss in math than they did in reading. And so we kind of used that filter as we looked through some stuff yesterday, and that's holding true with what we are seeing with our data with our students. So the next slide is in relation to math. This is a growth summary, and so what this does for you is this is not necessarily proficiency. This is going to compare last fall to this fall, how the students performed as far as their RIT levels. That triangle is going to show you what the average growth would look like for that grade level in math. The blue is going to show you the district data. So you will see in math we are slightly below as far as that growth goes. I also want to point your attention, you will notice if you are not familiar with NWEA, the higher you get in the grade level, the smaller the growth you will see. And that leads you to, you're working towards proficiency by the time that you leave high school. You scroll down to the second one is our reading data. And you'll notice the blue hits the triangle a little more. So what we are finding is the research that they have put out is really comparable to what we are seeing with our initial data. The next one is a proficiency chart. Oh, is that fine? Language usage, sorry. I've got two more up there. This is hitting more of your grammar, writing, spelling, that sort of thing. And then I believe the last one is science. Then the next slide is comparing proficiency. And so I want to draw your attention. This first one is with math. And what I did is I put fall 2019 compared to fall 2020. We like to look at similar time frames. This is a linking study that we participated in to where they can help us with some projected proficiency for our 3rd through 8th grade state assessments. And you're at the beginning of the year, so that's important to keep in mind that we're talking about very initial data. This is not end of year data. This is for the beginning of where we're at. And if you compare those two from where we were last fall to where we were this fall, in math you do see a slightly bigger red section, a slightly smaller blue section, but all in all they were pretty comparable with the expected slight math decline that we would expect to see. The next one goes into reading. And again, similar, if you compare fall is on the top for 2019, and then our current data on the bottom for 2020, you'll see another very similar comparison of where we were last fall. So while we do show some initial declines more in math than we have seen in reading, the comparisons that we are finding are within expectation and pretty reasonable. The next thing I want to point out is our English department. So something that's really exciting, and our English teachers are really digging into this data. Last year you approved them to have the My Perspectives English curriculum. And so they have really dug into their beginning of the year assessment that they have. And this is English 1 through 4. And what they have done is they are able, now what I'm showing you is a cumulative for the English department as a whole. And we're looking at student mastery. Our whole goal is when they leave us at graduation, they have mastered all of those college and career readiness standards. And so this is a cumulative graph, but I can tell you we can break this down, and this is the process that now we will start. Now that we have all of this data in, we will break this down to the grade level. We can break this down to the class level. We can break this down to the student level. So the teachers are super, super excited. I met with them last week, and they are on cloud 9 because they have reliable data that they historically have not had as much information as what they're getting right now. So you will see there's some really high points with literature. There's a very obvious standard that's really low. So that's easy for us when we're talking about differentiation, we're talking about priorities and where we focus our energy. Literature obviously is a strength for us. Informational text, we know we have some areas there that we've got to hit a little harder. And then when you look at our language and writing standards, there's some data that we can gain information from that. And so then the final page, we just take that and give a little more detail of what that standard is, kind of rank them. We have some that we know, teachers know, we're going to have to hit these really hard. Now, keep in mind, this is, again, overall, so this is just giving you a district snapshot for the high school English department. But then there are some that author's point of view in reading literature, we're already at 64% proficiency on that standard as far as the beginning of the year assessment. So there's some strengths. When they're thinking about prioritizing their time and where do I dig in deeper, this data is really, really going to support them, and they're pretty excited about that. So what we are looking at that I will bring to you in October is we are going to run a lot of comparison data. We want to look, we're going to dig more into virtual. We're going to dig more into those who attended summer school. So there's a lot more detail where we're going to try to get our brains fully wrapped around where we're at academically. But just a quick snapshot, I will tell you, based on research, we expected lower scores in math and reading as far as the learning loss, and we are seeing that. But relatively speaking, our fall of 19 to our fall of 20 is not horrible as far as the difference of where we were a year ago. So we will dig in from here. We meet with building principals tomorrow, so we'll continue having these conversations all the way down to the student levels so we can move forward and close any gaps. And I would welcome any questions you may have.
On these mastery percentages, is this mastery of the entire year that they're in, or just where they are in this point of the year?
Mastery of that particular standard. So on what you see here is you have the clump of the whole entire standard, but they do break out into 9, 10, 11, 12. So those are put together. But they will look at these by their grade level and by their class. But it is for the standard itself. So there's a 9-10 standard and an 11-12 standard. So a 9th grader who's mastering an English standard, they're going to be ready to move to that next notch of the 11-12 standard. But if an 11-12 standard is mastered, that would be the end of it. So strengths, places to celebrate, but then some good data for us to use to differentiate and drive instruction. That's what we're finding.
Thank you, Sarah.
And then in that same spirit, I would ask Dr. Gilbreth and Mr. Jim Whitney. Mr. Whitney teaches math at the high school, and one of the things that was asked about Thursday night was our ability to Zoom conference and have kids live when we're having instruction at the high school, and then also being able to go back and watch those lessons later. And so we did a little video demonstration of what Mr. Whitney's doing in his class. And as we talked earlier about technology integration and teaching more and more teachers how to use these tools, we are finding that the Canvas conferencing, which you're going to see tonight, is proving very valuable. And so we wanted you guys to have a firsthand look at what that looks like. And so take it away, gentlemen.
Yeah, okay, so Mr. Whitney does a great job of doing the Canvas conferencing. And what Canvas conferencing basically is a synchronous or live conferencing form of instruction where kids can log into live where he's in his class from home remotely, and they hear him, they see him, and it's and they have the opportunity to ask questions. They see what he's doing on his screen, and he can see what they're doing on their screen as they ask questions. So, and he's getting really good at it. So what we're going to do is put together a series of videos for professional development for other teachers to copy this same kind of model. So maybe you want to show the video, Eric, and then ask Mr. Whitney questions.
Okay, so this is Canvas conferencing, and it allows me to have my students who are at home be part of the class real time. And for example, this is my trigonometry class, and you click conferences, and then when you go to conferences, you just hit the plus conference symbol, and then that brings up a new conference that I have to start. I'm going to enable the recording so the kids that can't make it, they can go back and watch the video when they can later on. Here's update. This starts it, and the kids at this point in time will be able to see it on their canvas, but I need to hit the start button. As soon as it starts, it's going to ask me if I want to use the microphone, and I do. Usually it has a little, it's just a test button for the microphone. As you can see, there's already a student on. The student was waiting for it. And then what I do is you have to hit your webcam so that they can see what's going on. Typically it asks you for permission to allow it, but it didn't this time. So then I hit share webcam, and you see this black square right here, it's waiting, and then that tells me, it shows me the screen that they're seeing. Chris, are you on? Camera's ready.
There you go.
Okay, so you can hear the student's voice, and I'm sitting right here, so if they have a question in the lesson, they can just ask me. It's like they're here, I just can't see them. If you want to start recording, or in this case, I've already started, and I want to resume it. Maybe the kids are working on a problem, and I didn't need to record it because I wasn't saying anything. So either start or resume, and this is where you pause it. But then once I get this set up, and I see the students coming in, what I'll do is I'll go to my Apple TV. All right, Chris, remember back when we were doing the unit circle, and we had an X, Y, and R, only this time we're in Unit 2, you know the R, we're probably going to use what to find X and Y. Right, and then we'll use the X, Y, and R's for our definitions.
We'll write the X down out next time we have to. Okay, Christopher.
And then the last thing I do before they leave, at the end of the hour, I just ask them, okay, you guys make sure that you have your homework for tomorrow. And then I turn and tell the people that are in here that they remind them of the conference tomorrow. And I ask the people online if you have any questions. If you want to stop the recording, you're done with the lesson, you pause it. These three buttons right here, if you want to end the meeting, you just hit that and go down here to end meeting. Okay, so September 15th, if somebody missed that class, they click that link and they go down here to presentation. And if you click on presentation, that day's lesson will come up, and the video is over here to the right. You can full screen it, but there's just a play button at the bottom.
Okay. Does that help? You're going to have to remember to replicate it. What do you start with?
And they can watch the whole lesson there. And it takes about 30 to 60 minutes for the recording to upload. And then at that point in time, everybody, even the people that are here, if they want to go back and watch it, it's available for them on campus.
Questions?
Very nice. How was the adoption for your classroom? Are all the kids logging on? Is it?
It took them a while, yeah, and I just kept reminding them, hey, we need you on every day. So I have 2 trade classes and 3 algebra classes, and maybe 4 or 5 of the students in all of my classes weren't on today. So they're starting to see the benefit, and they're thanking me. You know, they want to be part of the class every day. So it's working well. It's got some glitches, but it works really well for us. The recording option, and for them to be able to go back and watch the lesson, maybe they got a doctor's appointment or for some reason missed it, they can go back. As a matter of fact, at 6:10, I looked up, I got a notification on my phone that the 7th hour one had just come through and was ready to view. So it does take a little while to upload, but when they get on, if they want to watch the class, it's immediate.
That's great.
And it's working really well for us. So that way the kids don't fall behind.
Yeah. Dr. Gilbert, do you have an idea of how many teachers are teaching this manner?
You know, I know that there are a few trying it, and I know there are more that have really, now that they've seen it to understand it, are like, oh, you know, try it out. That's going, like I said, that's going to become part of our putting aside for professional development, and then, you know, asking teachers start jumping in there and start trying it, getting on there and doing it. So at this time, I don't know the exact number of teachers that are doing it. They're kind of hit and miss trying it, but it's not very difficult to do. You know, and the thing about it is, to me, the greatest part of it is, like Mr. Whitney just said, you can teach a lesson, even if all kids are present. You can teach a lesson, it's recorded, and that later at night they're like doing their homework, and it's like, I don't know, how did I do that? Go click on it and rewatch the video. You know, and so it's like, I see how he did that. Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I was going to mention, it seems like it would be worthy regardless of whether we're in a COVID-19 pandemic
Yeah,
or not.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think Jeff may have coaxed this out of you, but I'm curious, are you receiving feedback from the students that indicate that they're able to work the system and understand how to get in? And
Oh, they teach me. You know, there's some things that I needed help from them on, so.
So for those of us who don't teach,
Right.
I don't teach, I don't have any idea how to teach appropriately. Those teachers that are not doing this, how are their students getting their instruction today? I mean, and if they're not using it, why in the world aren't they?
Yeah, honestly, Sherrick, I can't address that completely because I don't get to speak, you know, it's time consuming, so I don't get to spend a lot of time with other teachers. I know that there are some teachers that are using Google Meets and other things. What I really like about Canvas conferencing is that once the recording is done, I don't have to upload it onto Canvas. It's there for the students. So for those people that aren't using it, you'd have to ask them. I don't know. Maybe they don't know how. Maybe that's what the professional development is for, to show them how they can do it.
Yeah, and there's several things that people are trying, you know, the Google Hangouts, Google Meets, Google Classroom. There's several different things that people are trying.
Go Guardian is one they're
has
using.
a couple things, and the middle school has been using Go Guardian. They stumbled onto that, but then, and they said, hey, you got to come over and see this thing that we're doing with Go Guardian. And so I sent Chris Young over to the middle school, and he said, well, Canvas conferencing is a whole lot better than that. And so they got turned on to that. So now they're like, oh.
So, Doctor, you're kind of touching on an issue that's sensitive to me. I've got kids who are currently in college, and all this is new to everybody. But it seems like we ought to develop some consistency, because does a kid who knows how to use Canvas know how to use Google, whatever you just said, or all these different methodologies? It seems like we ought to figure out one and do it.
The thing about it is, like, if you use Google for your email, that kids typically, you know, I mean, because here's the thing, kids talk to each other all the time on some kind of a media, you know, and they talk live, and you know, it's not just like FaceTime on the phone, it's
Well,
doing.
yeah, I'm just concerned that for Mr. Smith, we go to Canvas. For Mrs. Jones, we're on Google. I mean, do kids understand where they're supposed to go for their lessons?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
you know, we want to try to level that playing field and put everybody kind of on the same page of what works. Let's use it.
Also, Sherrick, what I use, and I know other teachers use this, I use an app called Remind. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But
I'm not.
every day, when I start a conference, not only do I start it on Canvas, but I send a remind message to everybody that's in that class. Conference starts now. Every night, I will send them a remind that says, we've got conferences. In fact, if I have a 7th hour algebra student that has a doctor's appointment at 3 o'clock, they can actually get up at 8:30 and watch the one for first hour. So I will send out a message every night. Conferences tomorrow at this time, and this time. Please make one of them. So I'm sure that other teachers are reaching out that way. And if somebody wants to use Google Meets instead of Canvas conferencing, I'm sure they do, you know, take some time those first few days to go over how you do that. So I'm constantly in contact with the kids, making sure that they know what to expect for my class. I'm guessing that other teachers are doing the same thing.
So, you know, back in the spring when COVID jumped on us, you know, I mean, it was just a circus. It wasn't our fault. It was just what it was. And it was this, you know, I had a student in the district at the time, and, you know, figuring out how to just communicate or use the system, there was no opportunity to teach, here's what we're about to do. And it just seems like this is an opportunity today and in the near future to create standards of how this is how we're going to get this deal done. And I just want to voice that, because I think a lot of people had a really bad experience in the spring, which had a lot of impact on how we feel about the AB at the high school as to whether or not, you know, and I just think if we're cognizant of that, and then if we work toward a standardized way to be taught, I just think it's a good idea. And
I can address that a little bit.
Yeah.
Just from the K-12 perspective. So we did have conversations last spring and this summer for that exact same thing. So one of the frustrations that we had from parents was there's so many different places you're having my kid go. How do I zone them in? And so we had that conversation with teachers and principals. And so kindergarten and first grade use an app called Seesaw. That's their consistent platform. It has the ability for them to edit PDFs. So we're trying to prepare for that worst case scenario, hoping we never get there, and then kind of backing it up. Second through fifth grade have Google Classroom that we've asked them to get familiar with. But then we have ClassLink, and so ClassLink at the elementary level, it's beyond the elementary level, but the really cool thing that the teachers are loving, especially with our littles, they have QR codes. And so once they get to the Launchpad link with ClassLink, all the kid has to do is click a button and show their QR code, and it takes them into what we're calling their Launchpad, where it has the different icons for their digital access. So if they're a first grader and they're into reading, to get into their iReads, let's say, to practice that, it'll have an icon, and we have it set up and work in progress, getting everything up and going, but where it saves their passwords, because that's also a frustration when you're thinking about elementary kids, remembering the different places to go and saving the passwords. So that's at the elementary level. And then what we had at the middle school level was very different. We had schools who were heavy into Google. We had schools who were heavy into Canvas. And so we made the decision to go to Canvas 612 so we could help support as they transition to the high school. We have the Canvas platform. There's a lot that you can do within the Canvas platform. There's a lot you can do within Google as well. But Canvas also provides a lot of those components. I think the difference, so 612 is Canvas. That is the consistent platform where we're directing all of them to go. That was the curriculum work this summer at the middle school level. They did some major heavy lifting, getting those blueprint courses kind of put together and up and going. So we had some consistency across middle schools. But I think where we still have work to do as far as the consistency piece would be the live instruction, that live instruction component, because if you're, as employees and as staff, when we went through spring and summer, we use Google Meets. That's our platform that we use for meetings. When you guys call in, when we were virtual, we use the Google platform because we have the G Suite for educators as a district. So that is very comfortable to our teachers because that's what we use from an employee standpoint. And so when we shift that to the students and we think about instruction and reporting it and having it housed within that, Canvas Conference is really the way to go. And Steve mentioned with the middle school. So we almost did kind of an experiment of looking at a variety of different things because it is all new to us as well. And where we really have settled and where the teachers, I think, are really catching on and experiencing is the Canvas Conference really is the best platform as far as that instruction. So I think we still have work to do to get everybody to that point. I think that definitely is the direction for 612 as we think about that live instruction piece as far as the recordings go and that sort of thing.
And during our work session, we were informed by a teacher that they are having their more work put upon them. And I think this is part of it, and I totally get it, and I'm sensitive to that. And if they don't understand how to work through Canvas or whatever it is, we need to figure that deal out.
Right. And that's where that role of the technology integrations that we were talking about earlier, that's where that becomes more and more important as we go into these professional development and curriculum development opportunities, because we've got to think about what's temporary because of COVID and what are we going to embrace and see benefit of even once COVID crisis is passed.
We've got students who would benefit from watching the same lesson being taught
Yes.
2 and 3 times to figure it out.
I think that is going to become more and more a regular part of professional development, and being able to provide supports for our teachers to the extent to actually make that happen across the board is going to be a real resource decision of ours in probably the near future.
The other piece to highlight with that, so if you are not aware, we have a Joplin professional development team, and so it is a group, they're the teachers, they're voted by their peers for that position, and they just launched a survey. They are building an on-demand library of professional development, so that is a major goal that they have for this school year. So we're finding the silver linings and some things to help us move forward. COVID or not COVID, of things that we're trying to develop. The high school is working, Mr. Whitney helping with videos, and then I know as early as tomorrow, and I've got 2 teachers that are working on putting together some videos as early as tomorrow for professional development for teachers. So it's a work in progress, but we definitely still have some work to do with it for sure.
This is very exciting, and I
It
hope
is.
that we look at it that way.
We're calling them COVID keeps.
I like
see a
that.
lot of differentiation too. You said you got 2 trigonometry classes and 3 algebra classes. The science teacher was here. She said she had 12 classes this semester.
Yeah, well, that's really what it is.
So,
Right.
I mean, are
We have
you
12 groups of kids.
But are you teaching them the same lesson every day,
Yeah.
or are you teaching the same lessons 2 days in a row?
No. I'm moving every day. I mean, it's just like in any other year. So, like today we started Unit 2 in trigonometry, and the kids that were at home saw that lesson.
And
So
they
when they're in the
started also.
classroom tomorrow, they'll see the second lesson while the other kids are watching the second lesson at home. So I'm able to keep going forward because of this.
That's great.
But it
And I
does-
think that's the ideal, in my mind, that's the
Right.
best way we could possibly do it. But I don't think we're there yet.
Now, it does add an extra level of, because we can't turn in homework with the kids at home. So they're turning in basically two pages every day.
Right.
Because they can't be there that day to turn one in. So it's difficult, but it can be done. And that's what we're trying to do at least.
Mr. Whitney, I have 2 questions. One,
Sure.
prior to COVID, did you have a flipped classroom?
I have not tried that.
Okay.
No.
Well, I wondered because you said it was pretty easy for you to pick up, surprisingly, but I know a lot of math teachers, especially, had they had a flipped classroom, they found this
Yeah.
an easy transition. I just
Well,
wondered.
There's elements of it.
The tornado put us in a position where we had to learn quickly. And so every year we're learning new stuff, and I guess we've just kind of gotten used to it. So, and I know there are other teachers, I already have videos made from previous years that are on Canvas. If they go into a certain unit, there will be videos at the bottom of the unit for every lesson. So even if they miss a conference and they don't watch a conference video, they can go into the unit and watch the video from a previous year. So it's just, for the last 9 years, we've been learning new stuff and what works best for us.
So then my second question, what's more difficult, teaching in the world of COVID or being a Cincinnati fan?
I don't know. Although I do know we were up 2-0 when I walked out here. So I haven't checked since.
It's the oldest team in baseball, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah.
Mr. Whitney, I want to thank you for being here. Does anybody have any additional questions? This is what it's all about. I mean, this is a big deal to us, and really appreciate your input. I want to know what's difficult. I want to know what isn't. I want to know what's working. I want to know what the students are saying. I'm not going to affect change personally, but when the people in this room here, hopefully we are developing plans, and of course with Dr. G, I mean, this is what it's all my So,
Have you got any goal setting of how many are? Go ahead.
Mr. Whitney didn't miss a beat. My daughter had trigonometry, and I'm on Remind as well. So I got those lessons. And Caroline, are you on with Mr. Whitney? So he didn't miss anything. He's at the top of your list.
and I'm glad to hear that, but there's a lot of kids last spring that didn't have that experience. I think that we have to recognize that and correct it, and I think it sounds like we're working on it every day.
Well, he didn't
And
miss
that's
anything
great.
in trig last semester at the end
Fantastic.
after COVID. So everything moved straight forward.
Gold star for Mr. Whitney.
Is there a goal to replicate that you want 20% of the teachers doing the live teaching or 40%?
I'd like to move a little quicker than that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Start putting out videos and having people, try it out a couple of times a week and different things
I just hate to wait to the end of the year to get good at doing
yeah,
it,
no, heavens no.
and we miss that opportunity for
Yeah,
the
no,
students.
we'll start immediately on digging it, because really, it's just, as you saw Mr. Whitney, it's all there. You just click a few buttons and you're on.
But change is hard. I mean, it's really hard.
It
and,
is.
And I'm the guy who was probably the last guy to get a cell phone. I'm the guy it's just not easy for everybody, and we get it. And for those of us who struggle with change, we got to pick them up.
And we'll say last spring when we had our meetings with teachers and we were thinking about how we were going to kind of close out the school year, your personalities of teachers are very vast, and those with an education background, there was a point in time where just asking a teacher to video in their classroom for reflection purposes was a huge feat and a huge hurdle. And Justin's nodding his head from the instructional background. And so I think where we are of student-centered and trying to figure out how we're going to make sure students are the center of what we're trying to accomplish, there's been a ton of progress, and there's been a lot of steps in the right direction, but we still have some work that we need to do.
And that's a great example, Sarah, because, so I'm not a teacher, and I do not I don't want people to film me while I'm at work. I mean, I don't want you all to watch what I'm doing. That's a very private deal, and I get it. And so all these are issues, and we're going to have to address them all as we go down through this pandemic and beyond, and how it affects teaching and everything else. And hopefully we'll all adapt and be better at our jobs, all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sticking with superintendent data report, now to health and dental plan update. And Dr. Langford, just go right on into financial statements from there.
On the health and dental plan, this month we spent $1,037,149.42, which was pretty similar to where we're at the same time last year. It was just like actually a little less than 100,000 difference. We hadn't spent as much this year. One thing I do want to draw your attention to is, Eric, if you'll scroll down to the next to the last page on the dental, we were in the open enrollment period, and we did not get the dental invoice to accounting in time to get paid in the month of August. So you'll notice that there's no premium expense for the month of August, but we are covered. It did get paid the first part of September, and we also are recognizing a little bit of a kind of a rebate for MetLife was giving us a little bit of a rebate with the dental offices being kind of shut down the month of April and May. They allowed us to take a little bit of a rebate, which we are taking out of we're using it in our fund since we supplement the expense of the dental every month. So you will notice that next month as well. We'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Again, if you look at the financial statements, and Eric, if you will go to my favorite page that we look at, that tells kind of what's going, and really it's running pretty true. Percentage-wise, the local revenue's down just a little bit, but that's really delinquent taxes, and so that's to be expected. If you notice, the federal is up quite a bit, and that's because of the CARES money, a lot of the CARES money that's come in this year that was we did not receive last year. So that sort of makes up the difference on that. Down in the expenditure area, if you take a look, the thing that jumps out at you, or would jump out at me at the percentages, it looks like, gee, we're only 11% on capital projects a year ago, and now we're at 59%. But if you look at the budget amount, it was $15 million last year and $3 million this year, so you need to back that out to get an equivalent percent. But that's because we, in November, We intended to do it in June, but we were able to pay it off in November. The Bank of America lease that we had for the facilities that had been done is sort of a bridge loan till all the FEMA money came in. So overall, we feel pretty good about where things are. There are nothing that's real surprised. If you notice the county money and the revenue, there's a $20,000 deficit or negative, and that was for a correction that was paid in the prior year incorrectly based on the way it was reported from Jasper County. Newton County caught it. There was an error. They caught it, and we took care of it in June. Jasper County didn't catch it until after the year transpired, so that's why there's a negative. So typically you won't see that. If you would take a look at, scroll down 3 or 4 more pages, if you would, because I'm very proud of the financial, you can stop right there. The financial reports that we're getting, if you would go back and look at something that, for instance, April of the prior year in the old system, it was very hard to read, and now we export this out of our system into a spreadsheet, and you really get the detail that I think makes some good sense about the revenue that's coming in. And then we'll also, we talked a little bit about the accounts payable last month. We'll talk about that again when we get there, but I think it just makes it a whole lot easier for you to take a look at and see what's going on. It's not so busy, it's precise detail, and this money, or all of these reports are generated directly out of the SysFin system, as were the others, but this is so much more, it's so much cleaner than we'd had in the past. So at this point, the revenue, we've now finished, we're finishing 1/3 of the school, or 1/4 of the school year. The revenue, there's no surprises. Expenditures, there's no surprises.
Does anybody have any questions for our financial team? Do we have any public comments this evening, Ms. Pat? Thank you. That will take us to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Derek.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. It's been moved and seconded that we approve our consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That takes us to our regular agenda and our accounts payable. We go back to Dr. Langford.
Again, you get all of the details of all of the bills that were paid, and again, I will ask you to go ahead and scroll on down to the listing of payments are there. But what I always come back and look at, and I mentioned last month, we had very little accounts payable, $2.6 million. This year we've got this month we have $7 million. Well, why is that? It's all the payrolls, the way they fall in. So there is nothing that is out of line. The balance sheet that we looked at with the financial statement, that is the key to tell you what is happening. If something's going awry, it's going to show up right there for you. This is if you could scroll on down, Eric, again, and we talked about this last month. Hold it right there. And we continue to do this, and there was a question raised last month about how it was broken down by building. And we looked at that, and again, it makes it so busy, and we tried to simplify it again. We want you to know the vendor, and we want you to know who we paid them to with some detail out to the side. And I will tell you that even though we're not showing it here, we have every document that would support that if someone really wanted to come in and take a look at that. But our goal, much like that one-page financial statement, is to get this in a concise document that is easy to read. For instance, I'm just going to point out all season signs because it's there. We paid all season signs $1,097.35 in those bills that are listed in that group. And to me, this gives you better information to look at. And if there's a big number that comes out and there's a question, we can generate that for you. All you have to do is let us know.
The school abbreviations other than the number code?
I'm sorry. Yes.
It used to be building code number 1,
Yeah,
2, 3.
and it's so busy.
Now
you just-
CF.
you
Okay,
just
Cecil
can't-
Floyd.
You couldn't do it, but this is, to me, is very, very good, concise information. But we have all the supporting document in the files if we ever need to look at it. And that's what the auditors look at when they come in to look at these reports and then go back and say, we want to see, they'll just pull one and say, hey, we want to see the bills that made this up. So.
Thank you, Doctor. I would entertain a motion to pay our bills.
So moved.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Mike. It's been moved and seconded we pay our accounts payable. Please vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That takes us to our,
And if I could say one other thing.
Please, yes.
Again, Shelley comes up with this financial report, and probably most of you know I've had a little bit of personal situation that I've been dealing with for the last 3 weeks. We've put in a new accounting system. It's taking work. We're getting ready for auditors to come. We're getting our expenditures out, and I can't say enough for what she's done, and then people like Sandra Cantwell, who's sitting at the table, to really get involved in what's going on in her department, what Kerry does with his directors. But you guys have a great group of people, and it's working hard, and I just can't say enough, though, about Shelley carrying the slack for me a little bit.
thank you, Doctor. Hooray for Shelley. She's back there shaking her head at us. Okay.
She's amazing.
She is.
When, in the evenings, when I'm finally leaving out, I usually have to yell in her door, "Go home, Shelley." So,
I did tell her last week to go home early, and I checked with her to see if she did, and she did. It was 10 to 5, and she was leaving.
That's good. So, yes, great. Sandra, go right ahead.
We, as most of you probably know, we have 2 classrooms at the juvenile office. One is for the kids that are in detention, and the other is an alternative classroom, and the juvenile officers and the court liaisons help decide which kids are there. Sometimes they are suspended. We still get to count attendance for them because they are there and they are in school. Because we have the detention classroom, we have a detention center within our attendance boundaries, we get some supplemental funds. It was around $21,000. Judge Crane and her staff wanted to hire a para to serve in both of those classrooms, and $20,000 isn't enough for that, so they hired the person out of their budget, and then we are contracting with them for part of that FTE. So this $20,000 is money that is allocated for at-risk and students that are in detention to serve them and provide equitable education to them while they are getting their lives together. So presenting the MOU in here, so you guys can hopefully approve it.
Has everybody had a chance to read the memorandum of understanding? And it is our contribution for that service. And if we recall, Judge Crane did come and see us, I believe it was last year. Time gets away from me terribly bad, but what a fantastic program. So I would certainly entertain a motion.
So move that
I'll second.
we approve the contracted services to Jasper County Juvenile.
Thank you, Brent. It's been moved, and thank you, Derek. It's been moved, and secondly, we approve this share pay, if you will. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, thank you, Sandra, very much. That moves us to our on-site flu shot services with Justin.
So we, the school requested quotes from qualified providers to administer on-site flu shots to employees through mid-October to mid-November. Preferably, we're shooting for a date of October 12th through the 23rd during that whole week. We wanted to try to make it accessible to all staff this year with COVID concerns related to the flu. And so we're looking at taking the cash price that's been bid, and we'll take that out of our school health plan for those employees that are insured. But we also want to make it available to our uninsured employees and spouses. And what we have is a wellness activity fund that we get together with from our health fair that we do. We have some funds sitting there that we're going to try to pay for those others out of that fund so that we can get as many people as we can with flu shots this year in light of the pandemic. And so we would bring this quote, administration recommends the board approve the on-site flu shot services by Freeman Healthcare.
Thank you, Justin. Does anybody have any questions for Justin concerning this opportunity?
Will they travel from school to school?
Yeah, what part was in the RFQ was the fact that we had 22 locations. Okay. And so what we've done in years past is they will go to each individual buildings, we'll have a schedule, okay, and we'll have a time and a schedule that they show up at each building. Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion that we approve the flu shots as presented and explained thoroughly by Justin.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'll second.
Thank you, Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the on-site flu shot services. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you, Justin. That takes us to Dr. Moss. Policy update for first reading.
Yes, policy JG, and Brent gave us a good synopsis of our policy committee meeting. It's been revised. It's removing references to secluding students because that is addressed in JGGA. So that's not going away, but it's more specifically addressed in another policy. And also updating for clarity to address equity, and then some language about off-campus misconduct. So administration recommends first reading of the policy as presented.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second.
Thank you, Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this policy for first reading. Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and that brings us to our consideration of parameters for regular Joplin High School schedule. Dr. Moss.
Yes, and I gave some pertinent facts and data that you have become familiar with because of our work session on Thursday, as well as discussions at last month's meeting. So taking the feedback that I got Thursday night from our meeting, the only thing that I really changed in those recommendations for criteria is the last bullet that you will see where it talks about hospital occupancy. I know Dr. Joseph has shared that he felt like the 44 was a little bit too high. I put it to an even number at 40. That's the only change I've made since Thursday night. And we feel like it's important to have criteria met in order to consider a return back to the 5 days. I did find out today that Benton High School had to close. And so that's another example of now a lost week or two of instruction for an entire high school. And then we saw in the news just today that Jefferson School in Neosho has closed for a time being. So while things are going up and there's still a lot of sensitivity around that, it seems like the AB Day is working for us, because when you look at our quarantines in that spreadsheet that you can review daily, our isolated cases are not resulting in near the number of quarantines that are taking kids out of school on a daily basis is what we're seeing in other districts. So we highly recommend this criteria.
So thank you, Doctor. I want to let everybody know that this is an agenda item that I asked to be put on because within our board we have desires to set specific data points for us to meet to get us back on an everyday schedule at our high school. And so I don't see how we're going to get there without at least offering it as a discussion item. I don't care if, I'm not looking for motions. If you want to make a motion, by all means, go ahead, whatever you want to do. But I want our community to know that we get it. I mean, this is a big deal to all of us, and we're trying very hard to think of reasons and ways to get our kids back in school on a daily basis. And on the same evening that we may or may not take a vote on this, we hear from our principal at our high school about how things are going, and Sarah provided us data that seems to indicate that we're tracking reasonably well in these difficult situations. So this is open for whatever you guys want to talk about or not. I don't care. But I realize this got on the agenda because I asked you to put it there, and I thank you for that. I also appreciate that you're sharing with us that you've amended your thoughts on the hospital beds. I practice law with an attorney whose spouse is a physician, and he informed me tonight that we still have, our beds are full in our hospitals. And so I get it. And so these are stringent, and we want them to be stringent because we don't want to take our high school on a break for 2 weeks.
Right.
So I open it up to the board for discussion and whatever else you'd like to talk about.
I have a couple of questions and some comments, but question number one would be, how do we define adequate as far as the substitute teaching fill rates? And have we considered other avenues to fill those classrooms?
Well, what we have done in the past, because substitute teacher fill rate has been an issue now for quite some time, even pre-COVID.
Right.
And what we used to do when, as you said, consider alternatives. You know, we could double up classes, or we could congregate them in a space like the cafeteria or someplace, and I think specifically our minds are more to the high school when we're talking about this tonight. Those are not options that are open to us now, because if we're wanting to keep our cohorts together, and we're not wanting to result in 30 quarantines as a result of a positive, but maybe keeping it to the 2 or 3 or sometimes none that we're seeing in our schools, we can't suddenly bring groups together that aren't normally together. It defeats the purpose of our contact tracing. So the way I look at it is, if we've got principals in those classrooms every day because we can't get somebody else to cover it, or our paras that are paid with categorical funds are way unreasonably being pulled from the things we're assuring our grantors that they're doing to cover those classes. You know, we've heard from Justin tonight that we're adding subs, and we've got those business cards for you guys to pass out and try to recruit. It's getting better, but I think anytime our fill rates are dropping below 90%, it's a real concern. And so we know we're never going to have 100% fill rate. I mean, Justin tracks that all the time. And right now, Justin, about what are we running with our fill rate?
We're down this year from where we normally are, and we're probably running around 75%, which is lower than we were last year at this time. And I think I have some reasons for that. But in other districts that I've been in talks with, that's pretty standard across all districts. Subpools are down and fill rates are down. Many of them running down into the 60s. So anywhere from 60 up to 75% is currently where a lot of districts are. So that doesn't make it better and doesn't make it okay, because I was a classroom teacher and I know what happens when there's not a sub there. And so my goal would be to be over 90%. We added 90 sub hires throughout the course of the year last year, and we saw those fill rates starting to come up, and then we closed down in March. Many of those subs left us and had to go for other jobs to look. So when I was talking with Aaron just this past week, it's like starting over with our sub pool, trying to hire them in. I am confident of the numbers. We know what we need to do, and I'm doing everything that we can to recruit them and to get them up. So
I was just going to say, pre-COVID, we were at, I believe it was 90%. That was basically our average. I think it was 89% maybe.
Yeah.
But so.
And so as more teachers are becoming isolated, because we've seen that this past week, and I know of situations in one of our elementary schools where the principal and assistant principal have been subbing every day. And those kind of activities really aren't sustainable if we want to see school improvement. So we're working really hard at it. But the thing that I do not believe is an option is doubling up classrooms.
What about doubling up and moving those 2 classes outside the classroom? So like to the auditorium or to the bleachers in the gymnasium or something like that? Is that something that's been done or thought of? Or
I wish Dr. Gilbert or something was here to talk more about it. I see Sarah nodding.
Well, I was just going to comment on that. I think the gym maybe, and I don't want to speak for him, but just thinking through where some of the classes are, the gym may be feasible in a sense of there's more space, like the auditorium, I know fine arts, they're also spreading out. So one thing that we ran into, like with special education, their classes are typically small and confined. So they made adjustments structurally this year. They're using cafeteria spaces during the day. They're using a lot more spaces than we typically would because they're trying to spread their kids out and spread kids apart. One thing that we do have at the high school secondary level is where teachers can use their plan time to cover classes. So that's kind of the last resort of what they're trying to do. It's just going to be critical that that teacher keeps their distance from the kids. So and that's in any setting, depending on your kids in the class, that varies of how well they can protect their bubble, if you will. But that is another option that we are using.
And I'm assuming during any hour of the day, there's probably a handful of teachers that are on their plan period. So do we offer them a stipend, or can we offer them a stipend if they come in?
Yes, and we pay them for that time, and that's some of the changes that have been made
How
over
much
the
is that?
last
What
year.
is that?
that's in our agreement. That was just,
1/6, they pay for an extra class period.
Oh, awesome. Then they should be jumping, I assume they would be jumping on.
And that was renegotiated this year in bargaining,
Yeah.
so, yes.
The main thing, elementary was not allowed, but because of what Dr. Moss just described, even though we can pay elementary, we can't double up. But at high school, you can, where they have a class and they don't.
Yeah, okay. And then, well, and so my overall point, there's a lot of questions in this, but if we're trying to create a fair rubric to bring our kids back, and I assume that's what we're trying to do, then we need to make sure that these things are defined, and then maybe ultimately at the end of this, I would like to see what do all these numbers look like on paper, and so we can look at it and say, okay, when we reach these numbers, then we would be able to transition back to, a full class day for all kids. And so adequate, I think, needs to be defined, or having alternative methods to fill those vacancies. So if we're really trying to create a rubric, those are things I think need to happen tonight or at some point.
I think maybe before we get too far, my main assumption, and maybe I'm wrong because I heard last week, is in-person instruction more, how do I say, better for the students for learning? Or am I just, maybe I'm too old school and think that that's maybe a given?
It depends on the student, probably.
So, I mean, can we?
And how self-motivated and self-directed they are. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I would say, anytime we can lay eyes on kids, there's a benefit to that.
We want kids in school.
Okay,
We want all
that's
kids
what I
in
want to
school.
make sure first before I share more.
I think when I think of that statement, to me, that's more than the educational piece. So when I think of that, if I think educationally, not that it's groundbreaking, but the steps in which we've been able to progress our instruction, like what Mr. Whitney shared tonight, those pieces have made it very equitable in the sense of delivery. So the delivery of instruction, we have some great opportunities that I think we have found through this process that have really put us towards the forefront. I just shared today in the Southwest curriculum meeting, we were talking about, this is CFC plus everybody in the Springfield, Joplin area. Our teachers' ability to really shift from that traditional classroom, I'm used to my four walls, here are my kids, I'm teaching my kids. I do think we're in a very different position now instructionally. Depending on your kid is going to depend, are they motivated on their off day to where they're actually going to engage in learning? There's a ton of variables to that, but I think, would we rather meet in person or virtually? Well, when we can, we obviously do want to meet in person. Can we still meet virtually and obtain the same outcomes? Yes, we can, and we've had that meeting. So I think that it depends on what lens you're looking at it. Delivering equitable instruction, I think we can do that in either way. If you're thinking about
Just what's best for the student.
physically look, all of those pieces. I think it depends on the variables that you look at. But
Well, and I think something that I am eager to watch progress and see how this goes. I totally agree with Sarah. Anytime we can have that personal contact, we're social beings. I think the majority of our society does better when we're together. I do think an American curriculum, and we see that if we go back to a lot of the research in education, is we have gotten very broad but not real deep. And there's been a shift to mastery learning, and let's get deeper in our curriculum. And some of the anecdotal data that is coming to me from talking with teachers, and even what we heard with Ms. Boyer last week, is I'm eager to see that concept of quality versus quantity. And when you have a consistent pattern of 15 or so students in your classroom as opposed to 30, in the times that they are together in person, how much deeper and meaningful is the in-person instruction happening on that every other day basis. And I'm eager to see if we still attain mastery at the same, if not greater rate when we come back together. And we don't have that data for you guys yet because that's progressing. But the anecdotal data that I'm getting is that the classroom instruction may actually be more meaningful because it's taking out a lot of the classroom management and the discipline and the distractions that occur when you're trying to manage 30 as opposed to 15. It is more work for the teacher because you can't forget the other 15 that are watching or doing whatever from afar, and the extra grading and the extra planning that goes on. But I do think there's some deep quality happening in the classroom on the days that they are present.
And I think this kind of hits to just how confounding all this is because, you know, I think and I don't mean to put words in Jeff's mouth, but when he looks to, historically speaking, what is the preference? You know, we're going to say, well, in-person teaching. But there's no historical comparison to what we're doing right now. None. We've never done it this way before, and we don't have any idea what our results are going to be until we have our results. And that is part of what further compounds the frustrations of this discussion for me. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I hasten to compare in-person teaching last year versus whatever's going on this year because I don't think that it was even done the same way. And so, again, and that hastens the question, well, when are we going to know to stop? When are we going to know that we can all come back together again? Totally get it. Have no idea what the answer is.
One piece to that as far as the data goes, principals, when we met at the beginning of August, when we looked at that assessment calendar, we had some pretty heavy conversations because we typically do not test until after end of January, February for that mid-year point. We have moved that to before we leave on break. So that was all intentional so we can have this beginning baseline data, and then we will look again at that end of November timeframe to really try to get a snapshot of where we at, because that data piece is going to be huge for us as far as how are we doing, how are we tracking, and then along the way, you know, we've got the other formative units, some of the data that we'll be gathering as well from grade books and that sort of stuff. It is complex, extremely complex.
Have to open your mind to the idea that what's happening right now may be an improvement upon how it was done last, you know, when we had fully in-class teaching opportunities.
And that's why I asked,
Yeah,
what
we
is our
don't know.
goal? If our goal is to wait until we have test results to know if we're doing better or not, then please tell me.
Yeah, I don't
Because if
know.
our goal is to get our students back into class, that's what I'm trying to share. I mean, if we're going to be the experimental, just so we can tell everyone else in the state, look, we were out for a semester and our grades improved, our performance was better, they were here on the days when it was their day, so their attendance is higher. If that's the goal, clue me in, because I want to be in there too, but you know, I went to look and see what else is happening, you know, comparison districts.
So in defense with what we're doing, we didn't go into this deal with that idea as being what was going to be the result of the experiment, right? I mean, you know, we're just fighting a pandemic. And you bring up great points. I mean, that's the whole reason for the conversation.
I can tell you my goal. My goal is to have school. And my goal is to have school consistently and something that parents can plan for and count on with some predictability. My goal is for us to not have to shut down and go completely virtual for 2 weeks. And my goal is to not have an inordinate amount of students coming in and out of quarantine all the time. So far, we're achieving that goal. And so my goal is to stay in school and to have as few quarantines impact daily variability as possible, because I'm hearing stories from other schools where, okay, my kid's been quarantined for the third, fourth time, and they've been out the entire last 6 weeks. So saying we're in person 5 days a week, when you look at those numbers, we may be overall in person by the end of the semester as much as other schools that are doing it with less predictability. I don't know. This can change every 5 minutes. But my goal is that we stay open and that we stay open with consistency.
And is that how you design the additional metrics?
I think that, I'll blame Carrie Saketa for this, but we were talking about this the other day. And, baseball is a sport where statistics are probably used more than any place. And you can know exactly how many runs, exactly how many's on the base, and all these things that he can talk about much better than I, because I'm not an athletic expert. But you can have all that data, and at the end of that inning, sometimes that coach is going to walk out to the pitcher's mound and they're going to have a conversation, and at some point, sometimes it becomes a feel. And that's why I think it's important to say, in order to consider, these are things we need to look at. Because if we were just looking at one percentage of the students without looking at other community data, I think we're missing the point. And I think if we bring everybody back together, and we've got 63 in the hospital like we did today, I want to know that if a teacher gets it, we've got a bed for them to be treated. So I think that my point in bringing this criteria is we need to consider more than just what percent of positives do we have at Joplin High School on any given day.
And I can agree with you there. There's just some changes in here that are maybe a little bit much. Like, I noticed the change in the language is now, we won't return when these are, we'll consider returning. So that's been changed. So these aren't the metrics anymore, because that's just when we start to consider it again. So maybe that's your coach coming in the ninth inning to
Could be.
say, okay, now everything's where we said it would be. Now, okay, let's come back. But in the hospital, from 44 to 40, it's minimal. But we've already proven, at least the city has, that there's at least 63 beds that are available and not 58. So there's even more cushion in that 40 number than you expected.
And then I get sensitive to what cardiac procedures or cancer treatments are we bumping in order to accommodate those 63.
Yeah. And I don't see that metric. If there's one out there that says how many procedures are canceled, I mean, can we get that data? I mean, if that's something that's important to you, I'd say let's find it. The one that is the most concerned
I
of
see
the
head
five.
nods over here.
Well, I'd like to motion to approve the parameters that Dr. Moss has set up for returning to Joplin High School on a daily basis.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Discussion.
Discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you. Back to discussion. So have you done the math on what the parameters are? Of how many, do you have any idea within 2 weeks how many positive cases there can be in the city without returning to school?
Well, she sets up yellow or green, and then we...
But do you know how many people that is? It's 25. In 2 weeks, we can't have 25 new positives. We won't be back to school in May.
I mean, the whole idea is that we want to be able to stay in school, and I think we have proven, compared to the surrounding schools, that we've done an excellent job, and I think it's important to be able to stay on an A-B schedule and be able to continue in school than to be out of school and not be able to social distance. I mean, the three important things: wash your hands, wear a mask, and be able to be distance. Watch your distance.
Have you seen what other districts have done to cure the social distance problem when they don't have space? For $2, they can have a trifold. It's transparent.
I just still, at this point, with the cases on the rise, the hospital, the county, I think if we put everybody in the school, we're going to be having a situation, and we're going to be out of school. And I think we may be out of school in a month anyway. And right now, there's no way in the world we can do anything any different. And I think we're fortunate to be able to stay where we're at. And I hope we can maintain this. I'd say it's 50-50, maybe 25 we aren't going to be able to maintain this, maybe less. I think things are really on the rise right now. And I think we're fortunate to be able to have this, so I'm 100% for this.
Should we consider pulling back our sports? Is it safe to have sports?
I mean,
That would
look
be
at all
another
the
discussion.
professional sports. There's no fans at any sporting events. So, I mean, how do we go and shove everybody in the school?
It's the highest risk, full competition between teams from different geographic areas. That's higher than what she's saying we should do to come back to school.
again, I'm
And that's okay. You
I'm
can-
all for these parameters and keep discussing, but I'm ready to vote.
Right. You do.
Let me see.
Well, and we obviously can't all agree on what's
No.
best, because, I mean, look around this table.
Yeah.
You know, we're all taking different precautions as to what we believe is best.
I don't think we're asking.
You just have to go by,
sorry.
you know, what you personally think is best based on the information and knowledge that each one of us have.
I don't think we're asking to be in school tomorrow or next week. I know for myself, if this is the desire of the board and the administration, that's fine. I'm going to support that. But I was led to believe that we're going to create a rubric that defines or at least outlines what it will take, what it will look like to get our kids back in school. And I think that is our ultimate goal. It's my ultimate goal. And so what does that look like? So if now's a good time, I don't know, but if now's a good time, you know, each of those bullets, what is that number? What does it look like? Because I want to know, and I think that it's fair to say that if we're trying to create something that's going to help our kids get back into school, what specifically or what is that going to look like? And if we can't answer that, then this isn't a very good rubric.
Well, I tried to make each of these as quantitative as I could, and I feel like each one is quantitative with the exception of what you guys brought out as let's define adequate. But as far as what that looks like, I think the others are fairly clearly articulated.
Now, the city case rates are tests taken in the city, not necessarily citizens of Joplin. You know how we have a separate hospital for citizens. Do we intend to, if we're going to say just tests that are taken in Joplin, should we say the metro area is the population?
Well, depending on where you live is where that particular health department is getting the information ultimately.
So if you're taking it at Freeman, it's going to the health department where you live?
Yes. So if I find out I can run down to Neosho and get a rapid test in 15 minutes and I'm exhibiting symptoms, that may be what I do. But I'm still a Joplin City resident, and that is going to get reported to Joplin City Health Department. And because we serve 3 masters, we're in Newton County, we're in Jasper County, we're in the City of Joplin Health Departments, I'm preferring to focus on Joplin City data because it's too hard to parcel out what
I just
part
want
of
to
the
make sure it's
county.
the city data we're looking at.
It is the
Mr.
city
McCarrick
data.
didn't reply, so.
Yes.
Okay, as long as we're in the discussion mode, there's 59 districts in the state that are on this AB modified schedule. And there's over 340 districts that are back full-time. So 60% of the state is able to have school full-time, and we're not able to. I think that leaves us in a position where we're following. We're not leading. But, let's see. And then the final note, and then I'll say my piece is over. All the data that the CDC has provided, they say, as the footnote to this packet, CDC is a non-regulatory agency and can only make recommendations. This document is meant to assist officials in making decisions rather than establish regulatory requirements, which is what we are doing. So I'll say I'm done with my discussion.
You had begun to say, I know that we want to take a vote. I don't mean to tax everybody's patience with us, but you're moving towards recommending as part of what you thought might deter or reduce COVID-19 results might be by eliminating athletics?
No, by providing barriers in the high school.
Oh, I thought that you were also challenging whether or not we should be playing athletics.
I don't want to create additional problems. I want to try and find a way to get our
So the barriers are those
students back.
trifolds for $2 a piece?
$2 a piece.
Okay.
Transparent trifolds that then you're within your 6 feet, but you're within a protective barrier, which is what some other larger districts are doing.
We have them in our district. that I work.
Uh-huh. Well, hopefully, again, I think that when we have those ideas, that we'll share them with our administrators, and maybe they can look into investigating the value of purchasing those trifolds. I didn't know anything about that. So, does anybody else have any further discussion that they would like to have on this?
What is 1% of our total building population? Just for people at home, so we all have the same numbers.
And this fluctuates, but if you look in the beginning of your action item under data, it says high school combined total population, students and staff, as of August 19th was 2,030. And I checked this morning, Sarah and I were looking at some numbers. That's pretty close. So on any given day, pick your number, because we're looking at in-person students combining the AB day as well as
Teachers and
faculty and staff. So 1% from that.
20 students, is that okay? And then the yellow or green for the Joplin Health Department, that's around 25?
As Jeff shared.
25 positives over a 2-week period. 25 new positives over a 2-week period.
And then we define flat, as far as the trend is concerned, as no upward movement. So what if it's 0.9 and then it goes to, or let's say it's 9 or 10 cases, it goes to 11, but then it drops to 7. That trend may not be considered flat. I'm just trying to create some scenarios that might come up that might be a workaround if you don't want kids to be back in. I just want it to be very clear. So is there maybe an average instead of?
I think what we've been seeing since we started really tracking the data on that spreadsheet that you guys review, I think it started August 27th in consistency. You're right. We may do this, then drop down this, but what we're seeing is, as we look at that scatter plot, it's angling the wrong direction right now.
Right.
So,
I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Ironically, and I don't know this for sure, but if we looked at the numbers and compared them to the first day that we started school, I think we're pretty close to matching these numbers here. And I just wonder if that's the case, if we get back to those numbers, is that something that you feel like we could open back up to every day? Or is that still?
Are you talking about the numbers we had at the beginning of school?
I'm trying to compare, each of these numbers compared to the first data line that we had in the.
I think as we look at those 2-week periods, if we're seeing that same trend line starting down toward that area and these other criteria were met, then I think we need to seriously consider that.
Thank you for that discussion. I've been asked for you all to vote.
Yes.
No. Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
No. So we're good. That brings us to our plus deltas. Dr. Moss.
Well, I think it was good that we started early this evening.
It was.
Because if you look at that clock, it is 7:32, I think. And so I would be curious, as we discuss going forward, if this is something that our board wants to maintain. Is this something we want to just try out for a while? Or I know starting closed session at 5:30 does not seem to be an issue for everybody to get here. Sometimes we had to move it back to 5, that might be an issue. But if you guys would like to keep with this pattern for a while and see how it works, it certainly benefits faculty and staff that are waiting around for a board meeting to start. But we want to honor your volunteer service in all of this and not put too much pressure on our board members to get here sooner than you normally could.
Yeah, and so I think if we do have a larger closed session agenda, that maybe we could move it back to 5:15, if not 5. Again, that'll be pushing some of our board members, so we'll just have to look at it as those days come.
Brent, can you get up here from Arkansas by then?
If I get out before traffic.
Slow down in Bella Vista.
That's the part you want to avoid, so.
Yeah. And then I want to brag again on Mr. Whitney and kind of just trailblazing through and the persistence that he's had in getting that out and how he's also sharing with his partner teachers. And I think we're going to see that continue to improve as time goes on.
Was that video to show other teachers how easy the Canvas site is?
They're going to use it in that respect, but also just, hey, guys, here's what we're doing, and to help acquaint you more to that as well.
Phenomenal instructor on it.
I have a Delta. We've been in school for about a month, and we had professional development for, I don't know, maybe a week or 3 or 4 days, I'm not sure how many. And it seems to me like we have a very small percentage of teachers right now utilizing virtual instruction with those kids when they're at home on their off days. And I just think that, I think we failed those kids up to this point. If and I don't know what the percentage is, if it's 10%, that's just not enough. And so I hope in a month when we come back, that number's closer to 100%, or obviously not every teacher like your phys ed teachers or whatever probably doesn't lend to their discipline as well. But I'd certainly like to hope that we don't ask our teachers, but we demand out of our teachers that we need to reach these kids when they're at home face to face.
Thank you. Is that,
I
Jeff?
make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank
So,
you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you all very much.
That person at Southern coming, Ms. Patton.